An historian, a writer, an archivist, and a publisher walk into a London pub.
How you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you in this pub for a change.
Welcome to the Dev.
Thank you very much for having us.
So you guys know each other from where particularly?
From
Prince of Wales.
Quizzing in Highgate.
Right. For did you say 20 years or something?
I've been under 20 years, I think.
I do sort of one or two a year at the moment. It's,
Yeah. We've been for a long time, right?
and I finally managed to win a snowball the other night. I'd never even been called up for a snowball.
yeah.
Got called up. In fact, we were with the right people here, and the question, thank God, was one I knew. Where's the only public statue in this country, I think anywhere in the world, of Henry VIII?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Were you there that night?
I was there that night.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we've actually asked that in one of our regular...
Have you?
So where is it?
It's at Bart's.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the old bit of Bart.
I should know that.
You know that, don't you?
You should.
Yeah.
Tony, thanks very much for hosting us.
No worries, yeah, I hope it's all going well. You guys are enjoying it?
Yeah,
You guys
thanks
look
for
after, I
having
have
us.
to run away for a couple of hours. I'll be back in the afternoon, so I might still catch you guys. Until then,
Cheers,
it's all
thanks
Oh,
a
you
lot.
are
Cheers,
good.
Tony.
Bye.
See, we've learned something already. Now, you may be wondering what this is. Well, this is Timetable.
Timetable London.
Timetable London, a podcast for people who love London, brought to you by people who love London, and coming to you from a variety of tables in some of the most historic pubs in the heart of London. That melee you heard at the beginning was our cast for today, assembling and being greeted by mine host, Tony Bennett. Yeah, you heard that. Tony Bennett, not just a singer and a quiz wizard, but also the jovial and knowledgeable manager of our pub of the day, the Devereux here in Middle Temple. This was formerly the Grecian Coffee House and was haunt of such historical greats as Sir Edmund Halley, Hans Sloane, and Sir Isaac Newton. In fact, we're sitting at the Isaac Newton table and hoping that some of the master's genius will rub off on our conversation. As to our success or not in this regard, you can be the judge of that. Nevertheless, we persevere, we carry on. On Timetable, let me tell you, we will be featuring a star-studded potpourri of great guests, each episode recorded in the relaxed and convivial atmosphere of an historic London pub. Actors, writers, academics, historians, taxi drivers, tour guides, you name them, we'll be talking to them about why they love London. I'm your host, Tam MacDonald, taking time off from my day job as publisher of Cradle of English to pursue my dream job, getting paid to sit around a table in a famous pub, conversing with the cream of London life and talking with you. Now, given the conversation is a team sport, I'm so pleased to be joined by my two co-hosts, Dr. Geoff Browell, Senior Curator at King's College London. Geoff,
Hello. Thanks for having me.
our great pleasure. And helping to keep things sane, or at least sane enough that our listeners have a clue as to what we're talking about, my very favorite contemporary historian, Dr. Jessica Borgia.
Well, hello. It's lovely to be here in London, where I'm from.
You're the authentic one here, then.
I'm authentic.
Oh,
You're all
right.
imposters. Born and bred, I am. Born and bred.
You were born within the shadow of Henry VIII's statue.
Yeah, at St. Bart's, that's right, Geoff.
Yes.
Yes.
The only statue of Henry VIII anywhere in Britain.
Geoff, you're so knowledgeable.
I know.
When you got lemons, you make lemonade, right? So we should start by pointing out, with all this talk of authenticity, that for all that we talk about virtual reality and artificial intelligence and so on, there's nothing either virtual or artificial about us. Conclude from that what you like. But we are really actually sitting in the heart of London, just off Middle Temple, enjoying the Isaac Newton corner at the back of the Devereux pub, formerly the Grecian Coffee House of this parish. And joining today's timetable as our inaugural and truly special guest is a thoroughly English writer whose dedication to the importance of being trivial, and if you don't believe me, check out his website, theimportanceofbeingtrivial.com, inspired him to join us today as the answer to a popular pub trivia question from the year 2034. Who featured as the first ever guest on the long-running, globally renowned podcast Timetable? The correct answer was, and will be, Mark Mason.
Well, thank you, Tam. It's a pleasure to be an answer to a pub quiz question, having asked so many thousands over the years. And thanks very much for sticking us in the Newton corner, because we're sitting here under several portraits of the great man, but one of them has got his famous prism of light in. He's holding up a piece of glass and he's splitting the beam of white light into all the colours. And we've just been talking about how he cheated, because everyone thinks that there are 7 colours in the rainbow. Richard of York gave battle in vain, and all those ways of remembering it. Red, orange,
Right.
yellow, green, indigo, blue, violet. Green, blue, indigo, violet. And he only split them up into 7 because that 7 was his lucky number.
Was he really that superstitious
He
to
was.
have a lucky
Isaac
number?
Newton was absolutely mental. I mean, he's famous for gravity and prisms, but he spent a lot of his work trying to work out the exact size of the kingdom of heaven, and he did experiments on his own eye, cutting them. He was fairly
What,
mental.
he cut his own eye out.
Yeah. But the
not
prism thing, he made it 7 by splitting purple into indigo and violet, which, when you think about it, are essentially the same colour.
No, they're not the same colour.
Well, they're
not the same, not even close to
red,
the same colour.
orange, yellow,
They're not.
green, blue, all make sense as themselves. Indigo and violet aren't really that different.
Well, I'm not going to split colours with you, Mark.
And, well, you can argue with me, but you'll have to argue with Pink Floyd, because the famous cover of Dark Side of the Moon, some artists, when they do a prism, when they do a rainbow, always insist on doing it as 6 colours. And I can't remember his name, but the guy who did all Pink Floyd's album colours, Storm, and he had a...
Stormzy.
Not Stormzy. Anyway, his name, he kept it 6. So if you look on the cover of Dark Side of the Moon, Newton would not be happy because it's 6 rather than 7 now.
Do you know, a few hundred yards from where we're sitting right now, he cut down the resident maypole. And he transported it to Essex.
The resident maypole.
Maypole. There was a 140 feet high maypole.
When you say a few hundred yards, whereabouts?
It was down near St Mary Le Strand. It was the tallest maypole in the kingdom, and it was made out of 2 sections from masts. It was erected by sailors, the Restoration. And anyway, years went by, and gradually it was shortened in its length, because storms would come along, they'd lose a bit, then they'd lose another bit, and gradually it got shorter and
Stormzy
shorter.
again.
And Newton wanted to use it to construct the country's largest telescope. So it actually held up the telescope, and it was near Loughton.
How do you know this stuff, Geoff?
I just pick up useless facts. It's what I do.
They like their telescopes because the monument was going to be a telescope, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
That was a couple of hundred years later, obviously. Well, no. Hang on. No, not that much later. No, hang on. No, it was around the same time, wasn't it? Because Newton was... Have we got Newton's dates anywhere? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Newton was 1642, 1720. No, of course. I'm not. What am I talking about? Nonsense. Exactly the same time.
Yeah, because Thomas Harriot operated just near here. Thomas Harriot was at Zion House, and he actually was the first person to develop a modern refracting telescope before Galileo.
Well.
So
All
there you are.
happens
These
there.
are the sort of things you pick up if you're an archivist at King's College London. If you're not, as we aren't, it may be that something else gets us to this table. And in the case of Mark Mason, it's your excellent book called Walk the Lines. The London Underground, Overground, written somewhat 8-9 years ago?
Written, where were we now? 14 years ago, wrote it. It came out in 2011, yes,
Right.
it published 13 years ago.
So I've got to start out with a question which I understand your wife asked you about 73 times in the course of your writing that book. Why on earth would you take on that particular challenge?
Because, as George Mallory said about Everest, because
boy.
it's there. I wanted to write a book about London. My editor wanted me to write a book about London, but there have been tens of thousands of books written about London. And so I needed something new to do. I knew I wanted it to be walking around London, because walking is the way you discover a city.
It really
it's
is.
the best
Yeah.
way.
It really
and that's
is.
why Los Angeles will never be a city, because you can't walk around Los Angeles. Los Angeles is 6 towns joined by freeways, really. But London, get out there on foot, discover it. But what route was I going to walk? And then one day I was looking at the tube map, and I thought, there we go, walk the tube lines overground, walk the London Underground overground, all 11 lines over the course of 6 months. And so the book's just a summary of all the facts, all the trivia that we've already been talking about, that sort of stuff, of the areas that I walked through, and then also my sort of banging on with my vaguely pseudo-intellectual theories about what makes London a great city. And then also, one of my favourite elements was the stuff you overhear.
Yeah.
And the brilliant little vignettes of human life that you see played out in front of you.
Like what?
Like, my favourite one was, or one of my favourites was on the first chapter, which was the Victoria line, going from Brixton up to Walthamstow. And by the time I got up to Walthamstow, it was about 7 o'clock on a summer's evening, and there's a street there with a pedestrian market on it. And by that point, all the stallholders had gone home, And it was me and one other guy, and I got quite a bit of speed up, and I overtook him, and he was on his mobile phone. The only sentence I overheard him say was, "It's going to be an hour and a half before I'm in Romford, Matilda. If you're going to have a bath now." And that's like poetry. I thought, if you invented that line in a novel, no one would believe it. So put that in, and then also the poignant stuff. I mean, we could all go out for a 15-minute walk from here, come back, and we would all have seen something or curious little thing.
But if you're just ready to look up and observe what's around you, it's all there. All of human life is there. You can participate in it as much or as little as you want, but it's always playing out before your eyes. And I just love that about London. As you say, you don't have to go out for 10, 15 minutes, and that's...
on one of the other walks going through Paddington Station, I had to get from one end of the platform to the other because I think it was on the Bakerloo line walk. So I needed to get from the end of the station where the Hammersmith City lines are to the Bakerloo line ends. And it was me walking along, the platform was parallel to the platform for the Heathrow Express. And I saw a guy getting onto the Heathrow Express to go out to the airport carrying nothing but a single red rose.
Oh.
But he didn't have any clothes on.
Did you have a ticket?
I wanted to get on and follow him and watch her face as she came through arrivals just to present him with this red rose. It was, London's a great city for that.
Well, it's just magic. Yeah, I don't understand when people say, London's a cold and unfriendly place, because it's never been my experience. I manage to have a chat with somebody pretty much every day. Don't you, Tam?
Well, there's an interesting anecdote in your book about this sort of topic, comparing Paris with London, and how some people stick to groups and some people gossip within their groups, and some people...
that was Peter. That was the great Peter Rees.
Right, the city planner.
And he was for 28 years, I think, he was the chief planning officer for the Square Mile. So he was in charge of saying yes or no to a lot of the buildings that are still going up, Cheese Grater, Walkie Talkie, all that expansion. And he was a massive champion, obviously, for the city, certainly against other cities, and even against Canary Wharf. He would make the point that the City of London is organic and is a real place. Am I sitting in it here? Well, we're not. We're not quite. We're just a few yards outside where the Temple Bar was. But Square Mile, he said, became the financial capital of Europe, because of the coffee houses. That's famously where the insurance market started. And he said, if you go to a cafe in Paris to get served, you sit down and the waiter comes and serves you. And you can only be, you're always going to be a certain distance away from everyone else in there. Whereas to get served in a London pub or a coffee house, you would stand up and you'd be crammed in, and then you can overhear the gossip of everyone around you. And you can go, I didn't know they're working on that. And that's how trade begins to happen. That's how information is swapped. Whereas in Paris, as you say, you only get the gossip of your own group, the people that you're there with. You don't get to hear anyone else in the pub or overhear them or eavesdrop on them.
This is the same anecdote as his reference to the bees on the compost heap.
Yes.
Right?
He's very good with his metaphors, Peter.
Yeah.
And also just with his direct talking, he said that one of the reasons, and again, what makes London a great city, is that people come to it all around the world, from all around the world. If you don't feel at home where you come from, you come here. So that's why he was talking 14 years ago.
Are you from London, Mark?
No, and I think that's one of the reasons I love it as much. I've always thought that corny old song, Maybe It's Because I'm a Londoner, that I love London so.
Maybe it's because... Come, let's have a sing song. Come on.
I
Maybe
think
it's because I'm a Londoner. And I love London so... And so on and so forth.
And so on. I'll thank you for the musical interlude, but and you'll thank me for not joining in if you knew my singing voice. But I think it should be Maybe It's Because I'm Not a Londoner that I love London so.
What's your earliest memory of London then, if you're not a Londoner?
Earliest we coming as on a school trip. I grew up in the Midlands, in a little village between Birmingham and Coventry, and London was always, as it was for it has been for centuries. What's his name? Dr. Johnson came here from Lichfield, and it's people just to gravitate towards London because it's exciting, and exciting things happen. And I remember coming down. In fact, it's 40 years almost to the month that I came to Lord's for the first time. A school friend of mine had tickets to the Benson and Hedges final, 1984, and I remember we drove down, picked up someone in Essex, one of their relatives, and then we were driving. And I remember about 8 o'clock that morning, July the 21st, 1984, being driven past the Bank of England when I was 12 years old. And the guy who was driving us, the uncle, just pointed at us and says, "There's the Bank of England." You know, it's got that magic to it.
Gosh, that really had an impact on you. If you remember the exact date.
I walked past the Bank of England this morning, and I think of it now.
It is magic, isn't it?
I think one of my earliest memories is the smell of the underground, because the underground does not smell now like it used to.
No way.
And it
Well,
used
cigarette
to
smoke
have
for
a-
one.
Really?
Cigarette
How did it used to
smells, and
smell?
it was a distinctive smell. And to be standing on the platform, and then you'd hear this. It was before you heard anything. You'd feel this breeze coming from long, far away down the tunnel, and then you'd hear this gentle rattle of the tracks, and that smell, which is gone. It's disappeared.
And Rod Stewart's memory of that is not so much the smell, but that of the train coming. When he and Ronnie Wood were, before they'd found fame and fortune, they were still using the underground. They would do enormous, great hairdos and all sorts of lacquer and stuff, keeping it up. Then they'd go down onto Archway Tube Station to get the Northern Line into town, and they would hear the train coming, and they would cower against the wall of the platform, holding their hairdos to protect it from the train that was coming
Break the hair.
in. Good old Rod.
Boy, those were the days. I remember when I came from Canada in '75, and not only was there that sound and that smell, but everything was black. I remember thinking St. Paul's was naturally black, and the tubes. It was supposed to be a big deal at the time when they said we should have some no smoking carriages on the train. Remember? So they made the no smoking carriages the two at the back of the train, which was tremendously smart.
So, you first came to London as a youngster. What happened after that? When did you become a regular, routine visitor? Did you ever live in London?
I lived in London from just before my 21st birthday until mid-30s.
Where did you live?
I lived all over. My first place was a friend who was a journalist who put me up. And I've got very fond memories of the DLR because of that, because he lived out in Shadwell on the DLR.
It's like a little roller coaster, isn't it? The DLR?
And sit at the front and pretend you're driving it.
You're driver.
It's like sitting upstairs on a Route Master,
Yeah.
And Matt was a journalist and would do sort of pieces that he would occasionally... Well, he's basically looking for an excuse to give me the odd 50 quid. And he would be writing his theory about the latest survey that said that women are more likely to, or whatever, one of those lightweight, frothy news stories. And he'd want a survey of his own done to sort of give him something to write about. So I'd go up and down on the DLR just asking 100 people whatever question it was. And it was so that was fun, and then getting to know the West End. I remember that first week looking at the A to Z and thinking, right, I know the West End is over there, because I knew I was out east. And thought, I just looked at the A to Z and saw Oxford Street stood out, and then I saw Oxford Circus Tube Station. And then I just looked like an inch to the left, and it said Bond Street, and then Bond Street, and then Marble Arch Tube Station. And I thought, wow, Oxford Circus and Marble Arch are close to each other. What are the odds against that? And then, of course, you realise you look around central London, and growing up, you've just heard of everything. You've heard of every tube station. You've heard of Buckingham Palace, Houses of Parliament, and you realise how it all knits together.
This is fascinating to me because I grew up in the city. Born in St Bart's, grew up in Clerkenwell, right on the borders with the City of London. So the city proper was my playground as a kid, and my father would take us up to the markets, Pescott Lane, up to Dalston on the Saturdays, and we'd go up to the West End occasionally. But we'd always walk there. We rarely took the bus.
Oh,
we'd
fantastic.
Walk. It was marvellous. We'd walk up, we'd feed the pigeons in Trafalgar Square. We'd do, when you were allowed to, get absolutely mobbed by them. And what's interesting to me is that this was just the landscape of my early life.
Yeah.
And the way that I attribute those memories and the things that I peg to those memories are just so different from others who have discovered London.
Yeah.
I'm almost envious of people who come into London as somebody who's never been there before and make all of these discoveries. Yeah, I mean, how wonderful. It's a gift that keeps on giving.
I think you are quite unusual as someone who grew up that centrally to really value it, because a lot of people just take it for granted that have had that.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the guys I interviewed in the book, to stop it being 400 pages of me just banging on, I stopped off and interviewed people like Peter, like Tim Benting, who's the Archer's actor, who was also the voice of Mind the Gap on the Piccadilly line for a while. But
Gap.
also John Pearson, who was he's since died. He was the biographer of the Krays.
Right.
And in fact, he was going to write their autobiography, and they would put him up in the East End. He lived out in Richmond, I think, and he would go over to the East End. This is 67, 68, to research it. And then in 69, they got arrested and put away for life, and he realised he could write a much more honest book doing their biography. But he said regularly then, the late 60s, he was meeting people in the East End who had never been to the West End.
Yeah, amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember going out for a drink once with a friend.
Just once.
Yeah, just once. It only happened once, and it was near it was up near Farringdon, up that way.
I know Farringdon.
Yeah,
That's my old stomping
I can't
ground.
remember the name of the pub, but anyway, we walked in, and the doors closed behind us, and the doors were locked behind us. And then there were these topless women that were walking around with silver platters, and 10 and 20 pound notes were being deposited in the platters. And my friend looked around all the people in the room, and he began to recognise them. And they were all gangsters, and it was the Kray twins' brothers' wake.
Charlie Kray.
Charlie Krays Wake had strippers.
And I,
Wow.
yeah, well, they were just collecting money, and of course we couldn't not give money, and we couldn't put coins in. Because how can you put coins on a platter when you're surrounded by London, the cream of London's gangsters?
wow.
They'd rattle, wouldn't they? They'd rattle.
Exactly, yeah. That was a long evening.
Sounds like quite a good evening, though.
Very expensive evening.
Well, that little anecdote's made its way pretty close to the top of the today's anecdotage. But, that's a good one. And stick to that story.
I will. Yeah.
Do you want strippers at your wake, Geoff?
It's the only way to go, isn't it, Geoff?
It's just not, you don't get them anymore in pubs, actually, in London. Probably.
So you've heard.
That side of London has maybe changed a bit, perhaps. Who knows?
When did you first come to London, Tam?
In 75,
75. What brought you here?
some while ago, growing up in a family of Anglophiles, around London with the Coldstream Guards and Christopher Robin and all the rest of that.
So here as a visitor, you weren't studying, or
I came over here to be here for 3 years, and then I was going to go to New York, because anybody who grew up in Ontario in the day, this is before Toronto got its act together, everybody who wanted to do something big in the world would go to New York. And I found that not to be true.
well, we're glad you stuck around, aren't we? Glad you stuck around.
I do love New York as well. I can never work out which is greater, New York or London. I think in the end I always say that New York's got the buzz and London's got the history.
I was a bit surprised, maybe you weren't, when looking at the last chapter in your book, and you're talking about the hundreds of this and the dozens of that and so on, that New York is about twice as big. Its tube system is underground.
Oh yeah, well,
Twice as big as...
Yeah, and it depends how you define the city, because huge chunks of the London Underground aren't in London. You go out to Metroland or out to Dagenham, or purists would say as soon as you come out of the city of London, you're not in London anymore. But certainly going up to High Barnet or the eastern edges of the system, it doesn't really. It's not London in the sense that.
No.
that
I grew up in
London
Middlesex, and we'd always talk about going into London.
Yeah,
Now, it's part of Greater London, but we're actually Middlesex people.
yeah.
And they're at the end of the Piccadilly line.
Well, it's culturally different, isn't it?
It's very
Or it
different.
was.
I mean, my father used to take me to the markets nearby, and Southall Market and Shepherd's Bush Market. They used to have a horse market, and that featured in the Steptoe and Son film,
of
because
course.
it's where, when they put Hercules out to grass, they had to go and find a new horse. And you still had the rag and bone men, of course, around. Used to come around in the area. So it had very distinctive. It was a distinctive suburban. It was very different from central London.
Yeah.
Very different.
Hercules, of course, now lives on as Elton John's middle name. When Elton John changed his name from Reginald Kenneth Dwight,
Did he name himself
he changed it to
Hercules?
Elton Hercules John,
named
and he got the
himself
Elton from someone he used to be in a band with. Elton Dean was in a band with him. He got the John from Long John Baldry, who was a blues singer, but he got the Hercules from Steptoe and Son because it was their horse. Yeah.
Dun dun da 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 dun da dun dun. Do 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 do.
Dun, dun,
Do,
dun,
do,
dun,
do, do,
dun,
do,
dun,
do,
dun,
do. Wah, 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 wah. What's your favourite Steptoe and Son? Is it the one when they divide the house into two?
It is, and they're watching television, and the thing's divided down the middle, and they're
Who's
turning.
got the knobs? I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
remember who's got the knobs. Harold?
I've got-
draw a veil under that one.
And he says, "I've got the law on my side. I've got the knobs on my side."
That's it. Marvellous.
I get one of the big lessons, of course, is, and this is a cliche about London, but it's true, It's a load of villages that got joined up. And that's what we're talking about here. You know, all those people in Shepherd's Bush. It's called Shepherd's Bush because it was the last place that shepherds who were taking their sheep to market at Smithfield, it was the last place they would rest overnight. It was a completely separate place from London. And so all these villages got joined up. And I think, actually, I came during lockdown, I just refused to give in to the fact that they were trying to lock London down. And I was just come out and wander around and just go for big, long walks.
It was marvellous, wasn't it?
And it was
Nobody
really interesting.
around.
The city in the West End, yes, dead. But you would go to, I don't know, Pimlico or Stoke Newington or Clapham or any of those places where people they really are still villages. If you've lived there for any length of time, you get to know your neighbours and people were out there, you know, meeting up, sitting in cafes, talking. It was a real reminder that London isn't a real place, and that's why it's brilliant, because it's whatever you want it to be. John Pearson that I mentioned, when I spoke to him for the book, as we said goodbye at the end, he said he was off to see his bookseller, who's the one off the King's Road.
Oh, yeah, you know
called?
the one.
Brilliant old bookseller just north of the...
Begins with an S.
Sando.
John
Sando.
Sando.
Yes.
John Sando.
And
books.
John Pearson said he was off there, and he said, I'm off to go and see my bookseller now. And he looked around himself, he went, London. He said, it's the same as... I come up about once a week or so, because I live in Suffolk now. And John was the same. He'd come up once a week, and he said, every time I come here, I think something marvellous is going to happen.
Yeah.
It never does, but that doesn't stop me dreaming. And that's the thing, is that it's... Just sitting on the train this morning, coming up. I was coming to do this, and I'm seeing a couple of other people later on, and just, especially on a summer's day, wandering around, looking at those people. It's been, but it's not a real. Central London isn't a real place, and I don't want it to be. It's full of people from Canada or the Midlands or wherever we've come. There are a few people who were born in Central London. I know. Yeah.
I'm here. I'm still here.
You're pucker.
Proper mate.
Were you surprised to discover, as you were actually walking those hard yards from Baker Street up to Moore Park and so on, or the other way around, that when we talk about villages joined up, there are an awful lot of people living in the joins.
Yeah. Well, Metroland is all joins.
Yeah.
That's... Metroland was built, all the houses were built there, were developed by the companies.
That wanted customers.
They wanted customers for the tube line. And one of those, I think it was the 1930s, as recently as that, one of the Metropolitan line trains in, the businessman's train at 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever, had armchairs on it. And I think there was a buffet carriage and that sort of thing. Yeah. Imagine that.
Oh, how lovely.
Not very profitable, though, was it?
No,
Ever.
they didn't. No.
You've got to pack
it didn't
them in.
last, sadly.
Yeah.
Well, they used to make a lot of the famous London brick. Of course, the clay pits used to be out in Middlesex near me. And so London arose out of the ground, really, didn't it?
Yeah.
It burgeoned out of the ground and made this...
There's an incredible... The numbers in the book, and I'll have to look it up to remind myself, but there's I think it was something like 150 million bricks that when they built the first section of the District line, they got 150 million of those bricks. And
I mean, one of the first things I did when I was able to travel independently as a young person in London was to go to the end of every tube line.
Oh, now you're talking.
And I loved it. And my first purchase with my own money was an A to Z. And then to go out to the and the bits that would be at the end of the lines were beyond the A to Z.
Yeah.
So it was like terra incognita.
Yeah.
Oh, it was wonderful.
Jeff,
an
please tell me
adventure.
you've still got that A to Z. Have you still
I have still got it, yeah,
He's a
I
proper
have.
map
He's an
guy.
archivist, of course
Proper
he's still
map
got
guy.
it.
Yeah. Map guy.
And so Cock Fosters and places like that, and to wander around these places just for hours and hours and hours. And I do that with every line. That was one of the first things I did.
There's also someone, when the book came out, someone emailed, people have emailed me and told me various things. Quite a few people have done it for themselves now, and some people do it for charity. And there's a brilliant 80-year-old woman.
What, walking the lines?
Yeah, walking the whole tube system overground. 80-year-old woman who was doing. She finished a couple of years ago. It took her quite a while, over a few years, but she emailed me to say that she'd finished it. But I heard of two guys whose project was to go for a drink at the nearest pub to the every end-of-line tube station. And
That's a manageable, doable project.
Yeah, a few months, couple of years, and they said they were going up to Cock Fosters. You just reminded me of things.
It sounds like a much more sensible mission than your de facto mission to drink your way around the Circle Line.
Oh, that was
sounds like you had second thoughts about that.
That was one of the grimmest days of my life. It was
Really?
because
Well, you're trying to do it all in one day.
well, you know about the.
I wonder it was grim.
I'm sure most listeners to the podcast will have heard of the Circle Line pub crawl, but just in case, the basic version of the Circle Line pub crawl is you get the tube one stop, get off nearest pub, have a drink, back on the tube, go all the way around the Circle Line.
27?
Well, it's 26 stations, but the tradition is that when you get back to your first station, you have another drink in your first station again.
Seal the deal.
So it's 27. And we started, I did it with a friend, and I was doing this because when you think about it, almost all of that route, walking the Circle Line for that chapter, I would have walked almost all of the territory in the Metropolitan Line chapter or in the District Line chapter. There's just those two bits at the side that join it up. So a friend of mine, Matt, and I started in the Hamilton Hall, the Wetherspoons pub next to Liverpool Street Station. In fact, like a lot of Wetherspoons, glorious inside to the pub. And used to be the ballroom of the Liverpool Street Station Hotel. And so we knew we'd got 27 drinks coming up, so we lined our stomachs with fry-ups.
Fry-ups? How many fry-ups
Well,
did
no,
you
one
have?
each. I mean,
just one each?
Yeah.
All
We
right.
should have had more, actually.
How do you think London has changed?
It's always changing. I went on a London walk once, like 30 years ago when I was first here, and there was loads of building work going on, and the guy that was leading the walk said, London, it'll be a fantastic place when it's finished. And then there'll be, once in a while, they'll have knocked down one of your favourite buildings. But the older I get, the more I think it should change. And I'm almost like, part of me wants them to knock Big Ben down or something. Just
You want to debong London?
no, we could have the bong somewhere else. But I'm exaggerating for effect, but that's why it's great. And also, it's not as though the old stuff is taken away. Very often they're knocking down a 20th century building to build an even better one.
Yeah, really.
Peter, to mention Peter again, the planner, he said what he loved about being the chief planning officer for the Square Mile is that London can't be planned, and nor should it be planned. Yes, you need to nudge things in the right direction once in a while. But
Didn't you describe London as a, quote, mess?
yeah,
unquote?
it's a brilliant mess.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of people who've tried to regularise it, though. So even just before the Second World War, there was a big attempt. There was something called the Glass Committee, the National Glass Committee or something, and it was an offshoot of Pilkington Company, of course, the glass makers, and they co-opted various architects to develop plans in London to knock down the whole of central London.
Oh, great.
And put Le Corbusier, that's right.
Corbu, the architect.
Corbu. To put towers up like that, and actually between where we're sitting here and the Palace of Westminster would have been filled with tower blocks if that plan had gone ahead.
What
Can
could
you
possibly
imagine?
go right?
And then
with
the
that?
war happened,
really.
so it was
Yeah.
kind of that was.
But then also, Wren wanted to do it. Famously, Christopher Wren, when the city burnt down, he went to Charles II and said, no, we should have European-style boulevards and everything radiating out at regular angles. And thank God they told him he couldn't do it.
I mean, I've lived in London for, since I was born, so over 40 years, and it's been a time of tremendous change in London. Certainly the demography of London has changed, and the places that I have personally been able to discover, my London world has opened up as I've got older. But by the same token, there is some sort of organic core which never really, it's sort of beating and throbbing that never really goes anywhere and never really alters. Don't you find, or is that just me?
I think there's a spirit. The one thing that stays the same, I think you're talking about, is that of it being a home for outsiders. If you don't feel at home where you come from, come to London, and with now 8 million people, you'll find a group of people.
But is it also about anonymity, do you think?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
you don't have to have a group, but you can still totally be yourself.
I live in a village of however many 100,000 people, in 100 or possibly 1,000 people, that's what I'm saying, in Suffolk. And of course I know everyone there, and I go out on dog walks and you go into the pub in the village and you know everyone you see every day. And I love it. That's what that village should be about. I come to a city of 8 million people to get some anonymity and I come to this massive teeming world metropolis to get some privacy and some peace.
Yeah, you
I
can just
wander
pass
around.
through it.
Some of my favourite days in London. I was talking to a neighbour a few years ago, my neighbour Molly, and she said, "What are you doing in London today?" I said, "I don't know, I'll just go and have some drinks and pubs and watch people." And she said, "But who are you meeting?" I said, "No one." And she said, "You're going up to be on your own?" I said, "Yeah." And she looked at me as though I was mad. But it's the best fun you can have in London is sitting in a pub. Imagine people sitting at the next table here. They're listening to us. We could be listening to them. That's what it should be about.
You characterise London as being very international and full of people from all over the world, and of course it is. I'm half immigrant stock myself. We're Londoners, right? We're all I am. But yeah, we're very much melting pot. But as a Londoner myself, I don't see it that way. It of course is an international city, but to me it's full of Londoners. It's almost as though if you've been here for a certain amount of time, you're an honorary Londoner. You know its ways, you know how it breathes, you know what the rhythms are. You become part of that. You become part of that fabric. So there is still a distinct London type, isn't there?
Yeah. One of the crucial qualities for me is knowing not to stop dead in the middle of the pavement on Oxford Street as a pedestrian.
Don't do that. You do that, don't you, Geoff?
All the time.
All the time.
At least I don't commit the cardinal sin, and that's talking to strangers on the underground. That really would be. Has to be silence on the underground.
Banish you.
Unless they speak to you first, right?
Yes, yeah. And then I ignore them.
That's quite right, Geoff.
What do we all think? This is a question obviously for you because you're our treasured guest, but really for everybody. Do we think that London pub culture would exist if we hadn't had London coffee house culture before?
It's the same instinct in both, yeah. It's that urge to swap gossip into
People coming together so they don't have to pay their heating bills.
Famously, that's how Lloyd's started. Lloyd's of London, the insurance place, was a coffee house. Edward Lloyd had it. And what is now brilliantly, the blue plaque that marks the place is now I forget what they call them, but the mini Sainsbury's, like the Tesco Metro, but the Sainsbury's, Sainsbury's Local, I think they're called.
Sainsbury's Local.
And now it's a Sainsbury's Local with a beautiful blue plaque on the outside of where Lloyd started. But yeah, it's absolutely that same thing. It's we're saying about the financial centre of Europe. It's swapping gossip, it's swapping information, and having different points of view on things, rather than just having one type of person who's going to see everything in the same way. Someone will come from outside London and have a completely different way of doing it.
Yeah.
And also language, the way, different slangs, pieces of slang that come in, Jewish immigrants, Huguenot immigrants.
Yeah.
20th century, you get Bengali and blah, 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 and keeps changing.
But it's also a place where all this communication comes together, because we're just off Fleet Street, aren't we?
Just off Fleet Street, so that's the historic part of newspapers. We've got the BBC, what used to be the BBC, just down the road.
That's right, and Orwell was there, wasn't he?
He was.
He was there, and also some other key people.
Marconi.
Of course, Savoy Hill, which was the BBC's first headquarters, that's where the Institution of Engineering and Technology is now. It was George Bernard Shaw who used to broadcast from there. H.G. Wells broadcast from there.
Oh, we had John Logie Baird up in Soho, which is a mile away. Mile away.
It was all happening, and that was
television.
where they broadcast was where Chaucer wrote Canterbury Tales, on that one site, and it was also where Lord Reith, or the man, when he was elevated to the peerage, would become Lord Reith, who was the first Director General of the BBC, was haunted by the ghost of a chorus girl.
Was he really? Was that his excuse?
Yeah, who died of a cocaine overdose in the building that abutted Savoy Hill.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And it still haunts the building, her ghost. I like to think that the ghost was haunting him because she disapproved of his very upright Scottish Presbyterian ways.
He was a pretty formidable character, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He wouldn't have liked the other thing that happened on that site in, I think, early 1960s. That same bit of the back of the Savoy between there as it slopes down to the river is where Bob Dylan filmed the video for Subterranean Homesick Blues, which is the one where he's standing there with all the lyrics on cue cards.
Oh, right.
Where Mama's in the basement, and he just, as he doesn't say anything, but as each line of lyrics goes by, he just throws the cue card onto the floor, onto the ground with the lyrics written on it. And everyone assumes, because it looks like a windy little alley and he's Bob Dylan and at that period, everyone says that must be somewhere in Greenwich Village, that must be a tiny little back street somewhere in the village. No, it's on his first British tour. They filmed it at the back of there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go. Oh, good old Bob.
There's one big question from that book for me that we haven't addressed.
Go on.
And as we approach a winding up, I'd be very interested in hearing what you think now compared to what you thought before you wrote this book about the world of maps. You seem to have turned into a real devotee of maps, and you went to Stanford.
Well, Stanford's were great. Stanford's are still brilliant. They're still in Covent Garden. Stanford's surely the only thing in the world ever that links Kenneth Williams and Sherlock Holmes. Because Kenneth Williams, before he started making dirty jokes for a living, was a trainee draftsman at Stanford's in Covent Garden.
Was he really?
He was.
Really?
And that would be just after the war, I guess, because he was born in the 20s. And
He was in Bloomsbury, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Born in
he
Bloomsbury.
lived all his life pretty well
That's
there.
it,
Ended
yeah.
up living near Baker Street, yeah. But one of his early jobs was working at Stanford's, and also in Hound of the Baskervilles. Stanford's is where Sherlock Holmes gets his map of Dartmoor from when he goes down to the West Country. So, and they were brilliant. They very generously gave me the maps for the whole walk, because I'd got you can get a big version of the A to Z, which is 9 maps, each of which is sort of 4 feet by 3 feet, just huge. Mm-hmm. And it was nice to plot the walks that I'd done on those and put them up on the wall. But yeah, it's really interesting actually now, since the book came out, smartphones, it's become much more a way of life to look at a map on your smartphone. Mm-hmm. And they're a great thing, and I hate people that go, oh no, the digital's bad, modern world's bad. They can be a fantastic tool on your phone to have a map. For most of the time, they will be just as good as having a paper map. But what you'll never get on the digital map, which you get on the fold-out paper map, is that ability to open it out to sort of greater than your shoulders width apart. A huge map opened out, and you can see the whole walk that you're thinking of taking in great detail. On a map on your phone, you can either zoom in and get great detail, or you can zoom out and have an overview, but you can never see the whole of that trip and have huge amounts of detail. And see it all and zoom in with your eye at any particular point.
Well, you can't see yourself in context, can you, when it's phone? You can only see, the most you can see is a map that is the shape of your phone.
Yeah.
But when you're folding it out in front of you, when it's a big piece of paper, you get a sense of the smallness of yourself, especially in somewhere like London.
Oh, it was great. At the end, I'd got one wall in the house I was living in then. I had one wall that was big enough. If I took all the pictures off the wall and moved the sofa away and had to move a bookcase as well, I could put all 9 maps. I only needed 7 of them. There were 2 of the maps that didn't have any of the walks. But I put them all up on the wall in one go and joined it all up. And my partner came in. She said, is that it? And I said, yeah, well, you've got to remember the scale that the map's at, Joe. And then I zoomed in and said, look. And I pointed at this tiny little bit in the middle. It was Oxford Street. I said, like when I was doing the Central Line, which I did east to west, I said, that's Tottenham Court Road, and that's Marble Arch, and it was like an inch on the map or whatever it was. I said, that's Oxford. And she went, oh my God, that's... Yeah. And it takes you a decent length of time just to walk the length of Oxford Street.
Sure.
The biggest shopping street in Europe, is it still? This the biggest shopping
That's
street?
not the sort of thing I would know.
Wouldn't surprise me if it was. But the other thing she said, looking at that, was she said, oh my God, it's so green. Because, of course, the A to Z, if it's a decent batch of greenery, like any of the Central Parks or Epping Forest or whatever, it's coloured green. She said, there's so much green. And you think of London as being a big, sprawling metropolis, but everyone's got gardens and there's parks everywhere, there's woods.
You had a real sense of the greenery, I think, standing on the top of Tower 42.
Oh, yes. I'd forgotten that. This is great, Tam, having you remind me of all the stuff that's in the book. This is a trip down memory lane.
Your refresher course. We'll have a pub trivia thing at the end of this.
But the owners of Tower 42, which was then the tallest building for miles around, and now it's dwarfed by the brilliant new 22 Bishopsgate, which has just gone up. If you haven't, have you been to the top?
Have you done that? Yeah, it's lovely.
That is stunning. But at that point, Tower 42, NatWest Tower, if you're as old as us, was the tallest building, and they'd let me stand on the top. And yeah, exactly that. You look out, you see the huge chunk, all the parks, all the woods that it leads. And Harrow, there's huge amounts of trees up in Harrow. You look towards the northwest. And they also told me about there was a semi-professional footballer in the 80s. I forget his name now, but he used to he worked in the city. His day job was in the city. And they used to let him do his training by running up Tower 42 every morning. He used to run up. If you want the pub trivia question, I use this as a tiebreaker. Do you know vertical rush that they do at Tower 42? Which is where you have to run up from the ground floor to the 42nd floor. And a guy about 10 years ago broke his own record, blasted it out of the water. Have a guess what the record is now for?
42 floors?
Ground floor to the 42nd floor.
Of stairs.
Running up it.
How long
would that take?
2
you?
minutes.
Oh, I would say
At best?
say 10 seconds for each one, so 42 times 10 is 420 seconds.
which is
That's pretty close.
7 minutes. 7 minutes, isn't it? Yeah. So Tam, you're
Well,
going.
I've read it, so it's.
Oh, is the record in there? Oh, right. Yeah,
I think it is. I think it's something like 4 minutes and something.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's 3. Yeah.
Take me an entire day.
Yeah,
I think.
Jess has unusually massively underestimated it, but
I don't do stairs very much.
no, it's but yeah, 3 minutes 50 seconds, and he said no one's ever going to beat that. He said I just got out of bed the right side this morning, and I had a good day.
Bam.
Because the most famous map maker of the 17th century lived on an address right next door to where we are here.
What,
Arundel
Rock?
House, Wenceslas-Holler.
John Rock.
Wenceslas-Holler did.
Oh, I've got the wrong guy. Sorry.
Yeah, and he drew the famous long view of London and before and after view of the City of London, before the fire and after the fire.
Oh, right.
And he would go to the top of the church that is now Southwark Cathedral, and that's where he used it as this sort of triangulation point where he could sketch out and where he could draw it. Very, very highly accurate.
That isn't it bizarre, the coincidences that crop up? Because you just reminded me of something else in the book, which is out in what's now the district line, somewhere out in Essex. There was a guy who was the vicar of the church in question. Back then it was all still fields, and he made an early estimate of the speed of sound, and he got a guy to stand like 3 miles away, and they'd mapped that out very accurately with a shotgun. So standing on his church tower, he could see when the shotgun was fired because he saw the smoke come out of the gun, and then he would time it with a pendulum which was accurate to a quarter of a second but no more. And then when he heard the shot, he knew that the sound had reached him, and he did it in different days, different wind directions, averaged it all out, and he got the speed of sound to, I think I've got this right, something like 1,115 feet per second, and the accepted answer now is 1,116 feet per second. He was that accurate with a quarter-second pendulum 300 years ago, something like that. Now, that's accuracy.
Out of the anecdotes of speed and so on, tell our company again the story you told me yesterday about Big Ben and the bell.
This is
bomb.
This is such a gorgeous fact. If you listen to Radio 4 for the 6 p.m. news or the midnight news, and you do that standing at the bottom of Big Ben with an analogue radio, don't do it with digital because the signal's delayed slightly, but an analogue radio is transmitted live. The signal comes out live. So if you stand listening to the bongs on your radio, and for real, standing right at the bottom of Big Ben, as close as you can get on that bit opposite Westminster Tube Station where you're up against the railings, you hear it on the radio before you hear it for real. Because radio waves travel at the speed of light, sound waves, by definition, travel at the speed of sound. Sound waves travelling at 700 and something miles an hour, depending on the weather conditions, about 760 miles an hour. Radio waves travel at 186,000 miles per second. So the microphone is up there. The microphone is transmitting the bongs that you're hearing. You hear it on the radio before you hear it for real, travelling down from the top of the tower.
That is surreal.
It's beautiful. I went and tried it not for this book, for another book. It's just gorgeous.
So you couldn't really get rid of the bongs, could you?
No, I'm joking about these. You're worried now what I've said about
I'm
them.
worried.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to
we were
alarm
without
you, Jess.
bongs for a while.
Well, absolutely.
We've only just got the bongs back.
We've got the bongs back. And also, in terms of change, when they first unveiled the new Big Ben, you know that the numbers are painted slightly blue. And I thought, no, it doesn't look right. But actually, now I've got used to it. It just looks as it should have, because that's what it used to be until it got blackened.
Because the clock mechanism was designed only, again, a few hundred yards away from where we're sitting here.
Are we in the epicentre of the universe,
We are,
Geoff?
because it was the headquarters of Dent & Co. Probably the foremost clock makers of the era, yeah.
Right.
And they still got the original pennies they balanced the mechanism with, haven't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Centre of time.
Well, so that we don't descend too far into the anxieties produced by the threat of Big Ben and the rest
We
of
need
it.
to get Jess, you need to lie down, and we
think-
need to
Yes.
get her a strong drink.
I think I need a good bong. Big
And on that
Ben.
note, may I propose to our guest that we leave the last word with him. This is a bit of a surprise because I haven't prepped you for this, but
Go
I'm
on.
sure you will rise to the occasion.
Yes.
And that is that of all the people that came out of this book sounding really, really clever, I must say that I was very impressed with Harry Beck. And you walked by and you saw his plaque and the rest of it. If we had to lift a jar to anybody, may I propose that you take on the task of proposing a toast to Harry Beck?
Well, let's do it because he was a genius. And in fact, I thought of him about 10 minutes before I came here today because I got the tube to Temple and I came out of Temple Tube Station. I always have a look at the map that's still there. Harry Beck, for those of you that don't know, and I can't believe you don't, but still there must be one or two of you, was the guy who came up with the modern tube map in 1933, 81 years old now. Before that, the tube map was geographically accurate and the lines would wind around as they do in real life.
Like spaghetti thrown at the wall.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he was an electrical engineer in his background. He was then working for London Underground as a map maker. And he realised that circuit diagrams aren't geographically accurate. You just need to know how each component is connected to all the other components. So they're always straight lines or maybe a 45-degree angle, but that's it. And he realised that that's what you need from the tube map. You don't need to know where the tunnel's going. You need to know, I get on at that station and off at that station, and just how they're linked up. So that's how he had the idea for the tube map. If you go to Temple Underground Station, they've got a pre-1933, pre-Harry Beck tube map, and it's still there in a glass case outside, and it's just strange to look at the lines wandering around as they do in reality. And the guys at the station told me once that they genuinely do get tourists coming along, about to get on a tube journey at Temple, and they think that's the map, and they start looking at it before they realise that it's not the proper tube map. But yes, Harry Beck, absolute genius.
Shall we have a toast to him
Here's to Harry.
To Harry.
There we go.
Harry Beck.
Harry Beck.
Harry Beck.
Thanks very much for joining us today, Mark. I'm
my
not sure
pleasure.
that we have to say anything more than that because it's been such a fantastic occasion listening to you and indeed my co-host, Jessica. Geoff. And maybe since there are 11 lines, we've got 10 more podcasts to do with you before we let you retire.
Well,
like
I've had
Harry Beck into your wonderfulness.
I've had a ball. I'll come back anytime you like.
Good to see you. Cheers, all.
Cheers.
Brilliant. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Join us next time when we will be coming to you from the Sherlock Holmes pub in Northumberland Avenue, just south of Trafalgar Square. Our guest will be Matt Brown, chief writer and editor-at-large of Londonist.com, a website all about London and everything in it.